What's up, guys? I'm Taylor Gottney, and this is the brand new Game Time Podcast. Join the three guys from Auburn as we talk about all things sports. From predictions to reactions, there's something in store for everyone. Enjoy this episode.
What's up, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a brand new show. Happy Monday, first and foremost, but welcome to a brand new show. So if y'all listened to our last podcast, The Tiger's Den, that was with Auburn High School, kind of, partnered with them. This is our new podcast, which we have decided to name Game Time. It's going to be more unfiltered, and it's going to be just as fun, if not more. I'm joined, as always, by my co-hosts Taylor Gottney and Reese Kinder, and I myself am Max Mesman. Just a little insight into what's going on in our lives now, why we decided to make this new podcast. Reese is still in high school, working his way up through the ranks, still grinding. But me and Taylor have gone on to better and brighter things, going to college. But we still wanted to do what we love most, and that's talk about sports. So we're going to go ahead and get started off today with some weekend reactions.
There's a lot going on, and we're here to break it down on this week's edition of Weekend Reactions.
And I actually want to start off in Major League Baseball, talking about Aaron Judge for the Yankees. I don't know if y'all saw this, but Sunday evening, so last night, so actually just now, Sunday morning, because I saw he hit his 49th of the year on Saturday, but against the Rockies, literally hours before we're recording this, he actually hit his 50th home run, and this is his third season doing it. And so just to put into perspective how big this is in Major League Baseball history, the most ever for any player, most 50-run home run seasons, is 4, and that's by Sammy Sosa, Mark McGwire, and Babe Ruth. Each have 4 50 home run seasons. Aaron Judge has 3, which is tied with A-Rod for second most all time. And so, big news coming out of Major League Baseball. Also, the Yankees, we're getting kind of close towards that time of year where we're going to be talking about the World Series. The Yankees are looking good right now. I'm pretty sure they are actually at the top of their division right now. And, they're looking to be really good. What are y'all's thoughts on Aaron Judge and the Yankees as a whole?
Yeah, I think Aaron Judge gets a lot of hate because he's on the Yankees, and, a lot of people don't like the Yankees. But, we're seeing history being made. We're seeing a legend being made. I already think Aaron Judge is, probably top 50, if not more, greatest players of all time with, the absolute dominance that he plays with. I'm even his rookie year, we saw he had 52 home runs. And that's won him Rookie of the Year. So I think he's, honestly, front runner for MVP. I think if he keeps this up, we could definitely see him in the all-time greats. You talk about Sammy Sosa, Mark McGwire, Babe Ruth. Those are 3 guys that everyone can argue are 3 of the best hitters of all time. So, if Aaron Judge keeps this up, we're in for a long, dominant run by Aaron Judge in Major League Baseball at this point.
Yeah, I think Judge, he's always been a good power hitter. We saw him in high school as well. He was hitting home runs like that. So, you just have a guy like that on your team. It's kind of an advantage in the playoffs, especially with the Yankees, the guys they have. If your pitching's not working, you could always have those guys get you some runs so you could get a big win against a team and win those series and possibly make a World Series if you can get that far. But I think Judge definitely, well-deserved 50 home runs. I think he might, if he keeps it up, he could possibly hit 62, maybe 64, something like that.
Yeah. And what's insane, sorry, Max, when he got drafted in 2013 in the first round, it took him 4 years to get to the big leagues, to get called up and make an opening day roster, which is, insane. The dominance that he must have had in the minor leagues and how the Yankees were just so good they couldn't pull him up, but once he finally got his shot, he just took away with it, and he's just so good. I can't even glaze him enough. He's so good.
Yeah. No, speaking of how dominant he is, literally live update as we're recording this, he just hit his 51st home run at 300 and 370
No way.
371 foot bomb over right center in the 7th inning against the Rockies. They're currently up 7-3 in the top of the 8th. So, yeah. So, as we're talking about this, Aaron Judge has just went to 51, and there's still a lot of season to play.
We just talk about how dominant Juan Soto, Giancarlo Stanton, and Aaron Judge are like the best, like the three musketeers of hitting home runs. It's insane.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And talking about where the Yankees are right now specifically, they are at the top of the AL East. They're half a game ahead of the Orioles. I mean, I'm telling you, the Orioles and the Yankees, I mean, they've been battling it out all year. Both really good teams, but the Yankees are just, yeah, they're on a different level. What were you about to say, Reese?
I was just saying that, yeah, the Yankees, with Soto and everything, they possibly could make a run deep into the playoffs.
And I feel like it's a little bit different than the Dodgers. Like the Yankees, I feel like don't buy literally everyone. Like they still produce, like for example, Gleyber Torres and Aaron Judge. Like they produce those guys. Of course, they have people like LeMahieu and Rizzo that they sign, and Juan Soto, of course. But I mean, we're seeing to where the top teams don't have to spend all this money to be good. Like, look at the Orioles. I mean, they're right behind the Yankees. They produce everyone. It's just a good look for baseball when the teams like the Yankees and the Orioles and the Braves even, like people that find these prospects, produce them into Major League Baseball players. It makes it fun to watch, unlike the Dodgers.
Honestly, if the Dodgers and the Yankees played in the World Series, that'd probably be the most watched World Series in history.
It'll definitely be good. And even though I'm a Red Sox fan, I actually might be rooting for the Yankees. I mean, I just love this team. No bias. I mean, I think the addition of Jazz Chisholm, too, from the Marlins was a great move as well. And that's really the only big move that they made, in season this year. But, you look at all the pieces around Judge, that team is totally stacked. But now we're going to be moving on I want to talk about college football is back. It happened yesterday. Well, technically 2 days from when y'all are listening to this. But I think probably one of the best starts to the year that we could have asked for. First off, you start the day with College Game Day, which, say what you will about it. I still think it is the premier start to a college football day out of any main broadcast. I don't think Big Noon Kickoff from Fox really touches it at all.
No.
But
dude, that was amazing when they went through the Irish the fields and stuff, and then the intro. The intro is always amazing.
Absolutely, and I think Nick Saban, while he does have some interesting takes, don't sleep on USC. I think it's kind of a wild take.
And how he picked Georgia to win the whole thing, even though he was Alabama's coach forever.
Yeah, and then Desmond Howard's over here he says, oh, Georgia Tech, Florida State, none of them are going to win the ACC, so Miami.
Yep, Pat McAfee picking West Virginia to win the Big 12.
Pat McAfee picking West Virginia to do literally everything. But now talking about the actual games of the day, I think we got really all the games yesterday were great. Except for Hawaii, Delaware State. But I mean, nobody
was up to watch that game.
But even New Mexico, Montana State, that was a game that was I don't know if y'all saw it, but Montana State entered the fourth quarter down by 17.
Dude, they outscored New Mexico 21-0 in the fourth quarter.
I did watch that game. That was crazy.
Yeah, but let's talk about the game that everybody's been talking about. Jalen Ramsey and multiple NFL players have released their reactions to the game, and that's Georgia Tech, Florida State. A game that people have been talking about really all summer as possibly one of the better starts to the season that we've had. Because you remember last year was actually Notre Dame Navy. I looked back at the schedule. 2 years ago was Rutgers Northwestern. Last year was Notre Dame Navy in Ireland. And that game was an absolute blowout.
Just wait till next year. Next year's going to be better.
Yeah, absolutely. But we could not have asked for a better game. Let's get into the actual game. Georgia Tech upsets the number 10 Florida State Seminoles 24-21. On not only did they upset them, but they upset them on a game-winning field goal as time expired. I mean, this game had everything. First of all, the FSU quarterback hitting a 59-yard kick. Not only that, he could have hit that from at least 62. That was a bomb. But it had everything from that. FSU opened the game up with a 29-yard rushing touchdown and then a 2-point conversion off of it was like a sideways snap. It was just a crazy play. But then Georgia Tech, I mean, so to preface this, fans out there listening to this, we actually tried to do. This is our second attempt at doing our debut episode for this podcast, and on that last one, we actually gave our predictions for that game. And me and Taylor both had FSU winning, not by a lot. I think mine was like 20-13, and then Taylor's was somewhere around there as well in the 7-point range for FSU to win. We both thought it was going to be low scoring, which it was. But Reese, I gotta give you your props. Had Georgia Tech winning straight up against Florida State. You'd been telling me that all year. And what surprised me the most about this game is because me and Taylor, like I said, me and Taylor were on like the same wavelength for this game. We thought that FSU was the ultimate decider in this game was FSU dominating the line of scrimmage. Because you look at the guys they have. Marvin Jones Jr., transfer from Georgia. Patrick Payton, a guy that's preseason All-American. You have all these guys up front. And Georgia Tech, while their offensive line is experienced, they haven't necessarily been good over the last 3 seasons they played together. And so it's came to my mind, what changed? And they hired I didn't even know about this until watching the game. They actually hired the defensive coordinator from Duke, Tyler Santucci, who they kept touching on throughout the broadcast. And I'll tell you what, that Georgia Tech defense, last year they were dead last in the ACC. And I know because I like Georgia Tech. I would say they're my second favorite team besides Auburn. And last year they were horrible at getting pressure to the quarterback. I think they had 21 sacks last year, which was dead last in the ACC. And this game, I'm pretty sure they had at least 3 on DJU. And so you talk about a team that not only dominated the line of scrimmage, but really just controlled the pace of the game. I mean, they had a 7-minute drive to end the game to win it. Like, I thought Florida was going to at least get the ball back, to try and take the lead. But Georgia Tech, absolutely kudos to them, just dominating the game. We'll see how they do the rest of the year. And if you're FSU, is this a reason to worry? I want to start off asking y'all with this question. Should you be worried if you're FSU with this loss to the Yellow Jackets?
Yeah, I mean, coming into the season, they said it on the broadcast, Florida State was, like, after the whole playoff thing last year, was coming in with, like, a chip on their shoulder, I guess, like revenge. And, I mean, you come out and lose to an ACC opponent, now you're already 0-1 in your conference. And, I mean, their schedule doesn't get any easier. They still have to play Clemson, SMU, who won the other day, Miami, Notre Dame, Florida. I mean, this Florida State team, you really got to worry. And I want to say one thing, why they have to worry so much about DJU. DJU looked absolutely ass at football. He looked like he had never been on a football field in his life. Now, on the other hand, Haynes King didn't throw for a lot of yards, but he just looked so much calmer. I just think the lights were too bright for DJU. He doesn't know how to play in ACC football. We saw him at Clemson. Lights were too bright for him there. Clemson lost to some opponents that they should have beat. I mean, this Florida State team just did not play good. I think they could have lost by even more if Georgia Tech didn't fumble the ball twice. That's all I'm going to say. Florida State, you got to worry. Like, your playoff hopes are already done. I'm saying it right now.
Wow. Yeah, honestly, I think you're right. And also, like, another game on their schedule that could be a worry is, Memphis is not that bad either. And you play them at home, but still, yesterday the announcer at the end of the game was like, that Memphis game is going to be a big game to decide what's going to happen for the rest of the season as well, because if you lose to Memphis, then you might as well just forget it. And, I mean, like you said, DJU, we've seen him in the ACC, and Clemson, I think he lost like 4 games. It's just been with DJU, he hasn't really had a good season. I would say maybe Oregon State was decent, but he hasn't really had a good season. And yesterday, the O-line was not protecting him at all. You could see the O-line was terrible. And that's what happens. Like, that's why I picked Georgia Tech to win the game, is because Florida State lost 79% of their team from last year. And you don't just come in to a new season ranked 10th in the country, which was outrageous, and then you expect to blow out Georgia Tech when Georgia Tech has almost all of their team from last year back. and they got a new defensive coordinator, and especially Florida State just had some people, just some of these freshmen on the O-line that, you can't always get a freshman O-line to work together in the first part of the season, especially that first game. So that's what's going to be the case this season, is if they lose some of these games they're not supposed to, then it's going to be because they have a younger team, and this team just hasn't gelled well. And that's why I honestly have them only winning about 7 games.
And I want to highlight Roydo Williams from Alabama also transferred to Florida State. And I mean, Georgia Tech absolutely shut him down. He had 12 carries for 38 yards. And we saw his dominance at Alabama when he was there against SEC teams. So, I mean, props to this Georgia Tech D-line and the entire defense. That defensive coordinator knows what he's doing.
Yeah, and I will say this about DJU. I just don't know. I don't know what happened, because if y'all remember, coming out of high school, not only was he a 5-star QB, he was the top QB. I think he was the number 1 in his class. He was in the same class as Bryce Young, so that tells you about how long he's been in college for. He was in the same recruiting class as Bryce Young, and him and Bryce Young were the top 2 quarterbacks in that class. He was seen as the heir apparent for T-Law, Trevor Lawrence, and just wasn't terrible at Clemson, but just wasn't. They won a lot of games in spite of him, not because of him, if that makes sense. And then he transferred to Oregon State, was decent at Oregon State, but wasn't impressive. Once again, wasn't the reason that they won any of their games. It was because DJU was lighting it up in the passing game. And now he transferred to Florida State, and I'll say it. I did post on my Instagram story, I think about a month ago, saying that I thought, now this was kind of a hot take, but I still thought that DJU would have his best year here at Florida State, and that Florida State would most likely win the ACC championship, not just because of DJU, but because of what they got in the transfer portal and their defense. Their defensive line, they might be one of the worst in the ACC, if I'm being honest, FSU's. I mean, the way that Georgia Tech was just able to run all over them, Haynes King with 54 rushing yards and Jamal Haynes with 75. I'll tell you what, Jamal Haynes is a running back that I'm looking at to be probably a ACC first team, most likely.
Hey, Max, you want to hear more quarterbacks that DJU is ranked above in that recruiting class?
Yes.
CJ Stroud, Haynes King,
Yeah.
Georgia Tech, Carson Beck, Anthony Richardson. That is insane.
Yeah. So that's why I'm saying, because it'd be one thing if he was doing this his freshman year. It'd be okay, he's getting used to college. But, dog, it's been 5 years, dog. How have you not still figured out? It's not like he doesn't have talent around him. I mean, they literally got guys from Alabama, like you said, Roydell Williams. Also, Malik Benson, who is expected to be their top wide receiver this year, also a transfer from Bama. You got Hakeem Williams, a guy that was also a 5-star, who's entering his second season with the Noles. A guy that I was very high on, Ja'Kai Douglas, who actually led them in receiving yards, 4 catches with 55 yards. And I will say this, towards the end of the game, when they had their drive where they tied it up at 21 and they converted, I think it was 3 4th downs. DJU, I will say he did surprise me on some of those throws. I know they were just regular crossing routes, but we've never seen him not only not be able to make those routine throws, but in those situations on 4th down with pressure in his face. But in the end of the day, it also seemed like Mike Norvell didn't really trust him enough. You could tell that both teams' plans was to run the ball.
Yeah. I'm at Arizona State with all the sports journalism kids, and we were all watching the game together, and we were Mike Norvell does not trust DJU to throw the ball past 6 yards.
Mm-mm.
Every single play, it was almost a Bo Nix offense. I love Bo Nix, but I mean, it was almost like they would just have an outlet and he would throw it, and they would just be a rack, it wouldn't be a deep throw. It was just awful to watch.
Yeah.
And you also have to think about it too. It was raining and it was windy when they were playing in the first. I think it was maybe the second quarter to the fourth quarter. It was about that. The weather was it was rainy and windy.
And that's where, and I like that you brought that up, Reese, because that's where I now want to bring up Georgia Tech's side of things. Georgia Tech flat out won this game. It wasn't that, FSU obviously didn't play like a top 10 team, not at all, but Georgia Tech won this game. Like they played absolutely stellar. There were times, and I can possibly see this happening to them throughout the year. There were times where their offense stalled a little bit because they are a run-based offense. But other than that, I mean, I texted y'all in the group chat at halftime. I was like, it was tied up 14-14, and ultimately what I thought was going to be the difference maker for FSU was going to be what happened on that first drive. And that was FSU pounded the rock. They ran the ball for 29 yards into the end zone like it was nothing. I thought that's what the story of this game was going to be against the Georgia Tech defensive line that returns a lot of the same guys from last year, but you also got to remember last year they weren't necessarily really good on the defensive line. That'll change. That'll change on Saturday. And so I want to get y'all's takes. What is Georgia Tech's ceiling after they have beaten a top 10 team the first time they've done that in 9 years? What's their ceiling this year?
I honestly think, like, of course, the ACC is a harder conference. You got NC State, North Carolina, Miami, teams like that, Clemson. I honestly think Georgia Tech could try to fight for an ACC championship spot. I just think they fall short with the teams such as Louisville, sneaky good team, Duke, North Carolina, Virginia Tech, who actually Pat McAfee had winning the ACC. I mean, if you look at their schedule, they got Georgia State, Syracuse, VMI. Those are wins. But when they go into ACC play, I mean, it's Louisville, Duke, North Carolina, Notre Dame, Virginia Tech, Miami, NC State, and Georgia. I just think with how hard their schedule is, it's going to be tough. But, I mean, I think they could easily go 8-4, 9-3, and then pursue something more next season once they get a little bit more dominance and players from the recruiting class.
With the schedule they have, I just don't. I see them possibly being 6-6, maybe 7-5.
Yeah,
but, I mean,
it is a tough.
They could surprise somebody. I mean, who knows that maybe the Virginia Tech game or the North Carolina game they could win, and they have NC State and Miami at their place. So, and we did see last year they beat a few ranked teams that they weren't supposed to. So,
here's what I'll say with Georgia Tech, having watched them and followed their team the last couple of years. You can always count on the Yellow Jackets to win a game that they 100% weren't supposed to win. So possibly like the FSU game where they're going up against a ranked team. They'll win a couple games against ranked teams, but they'll also win a couple games that they'll lose a couple games that they should have won. So like that at Syracuse game. They're probably going to be favored. They probably should win, but you never know because Georgia Tech has just always been like that. That being said, there was a graphic that played during the broadcast. They actually do have the fourth hardest strength of schedule, and here's why. You look at the end of the year. It's very back heavy. The schedule is very back heavy. So after Florida State, they don't have to play another ranked team until October 19th, when they have to go against Notre Dame, who's currently ranked number 7 in the country. And then you look at all the games after that in a row. You got Notre Dame at home. Then you have to go on the road to Virginia Tech. At home against number 19 Miami currently. And then at home against number 24 NC State. And then you have to go on the road to Georgia, who is number 1 in the country right now. And probably most likely will be by the end of the season.
But last year we did see a close game between the two. So, I mean.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and also – Georgia Tech, Georgia's a little different because it is a rivalry, so anything can happen. But at the same time, you're going to Athens. I don't see an upset happening, but then again, you never know. But I will say, this win is very huge for not only Georgia Tech but for Brent Key as well, because one thing that Brent Key I've seen through all his interviews throughout the summer is what he was saying was we are going to be. No matter who we're playing up against, we're never going to be like a lesser man than them. That's what I think what is his specific words he said at ACC Media Days is that we're always going to show up. We're always going to play our best. And against Florida State, they played their best, and it was better than Florida State. Like Florida State, I don't think played terrible. I think they were too conservative and were a little lackadaisical with the time management later in the game, which ultimately led to Georgia Tech kicking a field goal to win. As time expired, one more weekend reaction. We're going to stay in college football. SMU Nevada, a game that I think all of us said that SMU was going to win and that it wasn't going to be relatively close. We all agreed that they weren't probably going to cover the spread, FSU, because I think it closed in at minus 27 for the Mustangs. Actually, Reese, I'm pretty sure, Reese, because you've been high on SMU all summer, you had SMU beating them by more than 27. Me and Taylor both had them winning, but being close. And I'll tell you what, I watched that entire game at work, and it was close to the very end. Nevada, in a lot of ways, should have won that game. And if you're SMU, does this worry you if you're the Mustangs? Because this is a Nevada team that, yes, I mean, they did play a really good game and came in with a good game plan. But you compare that to the SEC team or ACC teams that they're going to have to play later in the year. Nevada is nowhere close to the talent level of those teams. So does this spell some trouble for the SMU Mustangs in their first season in the Atlantic Coastal Conference?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it with Florida State and Georgia Tech. I mean, the ACC is a tough conference, but SMU has the lighter end of the ACC, to say the least. They play Houston Christian. That's an easy win. And then TCU, probably a pretty big game. And then their only ranked opponent on the schedule is Florida State, who we just saw lose to an unranked team. So this SMU team, I think it was just, all the hype coming into this game. You go on the road to a decent Nevada team that was looking for an upset over a Power 5 conference opponent. But, I mean, this SMU team has some things to worry about. Honestly, like you said, I think Nevada should have won that game after the safety happened and SMU was only down by 1. I was like, okay, SMU is going to come back. Rhett Lashley's going to figure out something. But, I mean, up until the fourth quarter, SMU was absolutely dominated by the Wolfpack. So, this SMU team got to watch out for these unranked opponents. Can't be going into a hostile environment, not really a hostile environment, but in a way of environment and play like that. I mean, they played pitiful until the fourth quarter. Let's just say it. They played absolutely horrible. So
Absolutely.
I think with the schedule that they have, it's not as tough as Georgia Tech's. I think SMU does do a little bit better than Georgia Tech just because of the easier schedule. But I mean, you got to figure it out, Rhett Lashley. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, I think Max has heard me say that I think SMU will probably win 11 games, and I still stand by that even after this close win, because I honestly think this is just, first game jitters, week 0. You might have just a few guys that are, younger, and they could just be nervous about this first game. And who knows? I mean, I honestly think that Preston Stone is probably the best quarterback for them, and I think they just made a few mistakes during that game. And I don't think they're going to make those mistakes again. Like you said, Taylor, Houston Christian, that's an easy win. And then you have BYU after that. I still think they could win BYU and TCU. And I honestly think with the way Florida State played, they could probably beat Florida State because it's at SMU. So the only game I really see them losing is possibly Louisville or Duke, one of those two games. And I just feel like SMU is going to have a good season even after this close win against a Nevada team that probably will be lucky to win 3 games.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm going to be honest, I'm looking at their schedule. Yeah, they have probably the easiest schedule for any Power 5 team. I think that Florida State game at home will be an interesting one. Not only just because, Florida State, that'll be a big game for SMU, but also I think it'll be a big game in determining who is going to be atop of the ACC. But that on the road at Louisville, right now I got Louisville winning that game, but looking at all the other ones, yeah, SMU should be favored in all those others. But that's going to do it for our weekend reactions. And now we're going to get into we can go one of two ways. We got 2 segments today. We got Taylor's Trash Can. You know what? Let's go ahead and get into Taylor's Trash Can. Taylor, I want to hear you flame somebody today. Who is getting thrown in the trash?
Straight from the garbage disposal, this team played like absolute This is Taylor's Trash Can.
Alright, so like Max said, we tried to record this episode. It had no audio, so we're redoing it. Hopefully it has audio. I haven't checked yet. But I did the Texas Rangers because all 3 of us said, after the World Series win last year, we all said that they were going to finish top 5, top 7-ish in the MLB. And that's not the case. But to be new and to do something new, I'm going to do another team that we said was going to be really good. If y'all OG fans remember from the Tigers Den, back to when we predicted our top 10 MLB teams for the year, then you'll know why this is the trash can pick. I'm pretty sure every single one of us had the Seattle Mariners in our top 10. I think I even remember me or Reese having them in our top 5, top 7. Okay, the Mariners were 42-43, 3 games before the All-Star break. They were really, really good. Then the sweep to the Angels shifted the entire season for the Mariners. Starting in the second half of the season, this team lost its first 2 series to the Astros and the Angels. Of course, 2 teams in their division, 2 key series that try to fight for the division lead, especially them and the Astros. They go back and forth. This team has only won 2 series out of its last 7, and they're now sitting today on August 25th as a sub-500 team, exactly at 65-65. What the hell has gone wrong with this team? Last year, you had one of the brightest young stars in all of baseball, Julio Rodriguez, who it's safe to say he's had a disappointing season, to say the least. He's batting .258 with only 11 home runs and 39 RBIs on the season. For a comparison to his first full-length season last year when he was on the opening day roster, of course in 2022 he got called up halfway through the season, but last year he batted .275 with 32 home runs and 103 RBIs. That's right, 103 RBIs to 39 RBIs this season. And this team had a disappointing all-star vote as well, with only one player making it as a reserve after an injury, Andres Munoz, their really good relief pitcher. That's the only one. Last year, they had 3 total all-stars when they hosted, of course, Julio Rodriguez, Luis Castillo, and I can't remember, I think it was Cal Riley or something. It's not even like this team isn't scoring runs, though. They have 3+ runs in their last 7 out of 11 games. The pitching, there's a Mariners fan on my floor right now, actually, out in the lobby. The pitching has been absolutely awful. The Mariner pitchers gave up 8 runs to the Dodgers, 7 runs to the Pirates, 15 runs to the damn Tigers, and 14 runs to Max's team, the Red Sox, about a month ago. So we're seeing it. They're just giving up so many hits, so many runs. It's insane. And it's safe to say this Mariners team is probably not going to win the AL West, and they are now 7.5 games back from a wild card spot in the stacked American League, of course. How do y'all feel about the absolute poor play and poverty franchise that we've seen recently, the Seattle Mariners?
Well, I think that, first of all, good pick. The Texas Rangers. Like you said, that was the original pick, and I do think that they are in a much more disappointing spot than the Mariners. But talking about the Mariners right now, I think they're the second most disappointing team right now in the MLB, and here's why. Not only did they come into this year, there was a lot of hype, a team, with a lot of promise, and you look at the AL West, they're still in second place behind the Houston Astros, who, I'm not gonna lie, the Astros, yes, they've been picking up steam more recently, but I thought they would be doing a little bit better. So it's not even like they're in a really tough division if you look at it. But I thought with the addition of Randy Arozarena, I thought they would at least be pushing a little bit for a wild card spot. But no, I mean, the team that Randy Arozarena was on, the team that's fourth in the AL East, the Tampa Bay Rays, are actually better than them right now. They're 65-64, while the Mariners are sitting at a perfect 500, 65-65. I mean, it's weird. This Mariners team, I know Julio Rodriguez has been dealing with a little bit more injuries this year than he has in the past, but at the same time, when he's been on the field, it just hasn't been the same. And you look at the pitching, it's been absolutely subpar. Not even that. It's been dreadful for the Seattle Mariners. And I honestly don't see a way out for them to try and push for a wild card spot, because you have, like you said, my team, the Boston Red Sox, are two spots ahead of them, or 2 games ahead of them. I don't see, them slowing down at all, hopefully. But even look at that. You got the Rays ahead of you. I mean, you're going to need, unless the Royals or the Twins absolutely drop off this latter part of the season, the Mariners. I think it's tough to see for a team that came into this year with high hopes, and I just think it's a disappointment. And where do you go from here? Got to get better pitching, man. I mean, if you can't do that, we're seeing that with a lot of teams this time of year. And I know this because I'm a Red Sox fan. And that's literally, I was talking to my friend Jack yesterday at work, actually, who's also a Red Sox fan. And we were just talking about if our pitching was good, we'd probably be in a wild card spot right now because we have talented hitters. We have a decent outfield. We have Jaron Duran, Rafael Devers, who are both All-Stars this year. We even have a decent pitcher and Tanner Hook, but you look at the depth of the team and it's just not there. So got to do a lot in the offseason if you're the Mariners, because I don't see y'all making the playoffs this year, unfortunately. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't see the Mariners making the playoffs either. I would if this was like maybe a while ago. I don't know how long it's been since we're like in the lead of the division, but if that was the case, then I would have said they would have made the playoffs. But the Mariners pitching, like you said, has been terrible. And I mean, their hitting's been all right, but it's just like if your pitching's not good and you can't really, you're trying to go back and forth with scoring, it's not going to work all the time. So the Mariners just, like you said, Max, in the offseason need to boost their pitching staff up a little bit, maybe get a new pitching coach because, obviously they're going to have to get a new manager after Scott Service got fired from Seattle just the other day. So looks like they're going to have to find a new manager, basically a new team now. Just maybe they might have to dump some of these guys and restart, go from scratch.
Well, the Mariners, as it stands, are about to lose the series to the Giants. They got a series against the Rays, the Angels, the A's, the Cardinals, the Rangers, the Yankees, Rangers, Astros. Of course, the A's to end it out. But let's just throw them in the trash and move on to Reese's brand new segment, never before seen in the Tigers Den. I'm excited for this one.
This is Fantasy Breakdown with your host, Reese Kinder.
Yeah, guys, this segment was not in Tigers Den, and also we were gonna do it last week. It was good last week, but no audio, sadly. But this week, I was gonna do what I did last week, which was injured players that were available for to pick up in fantasy. But this week, I'm gonna go ahead and do rising rookies in fantasy. So this segment, Fantasy Breakdown, just a little overview of it. It's kind of just a segment where we go over 5 players that we think are good for fantasy this year in any category. And then we just kind of break down like the top 5 and where we think they should be put. So, these rookies, you got a lot of good rookies this season, but, the obvious number one choice, Marvin Harrison Jr. Harrison, one of the fastest perimeter receivers, has terrific speed. He's been great he was great at Ohio State, and I think he's going to do great in Arizona this season, especially with he's probably going to be the only target for Kyler Murray. So just Marvin
Arizona,
Harrison.
let's go.
Yeah, if you see what happened to Zay Jones, I don't know if y'all saw, but he was he suspended or did he get injured? I think he was suspended for some reason. Yeah, he got suspended. So I mean, you look at that. I mean, the next best receiver on the depth chart behind Marvin Harrison Jr. is Michael Wilson. So if I'm about to start a new fantasy league and draft, I would definitely pick up Harrison. Probably pretty early too.
Yeah, I would say early second round.
Absolutely.
Depending on how many people.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then my number 2, I'm actually going to go with quarterback Caleb Williams at number 2.
Yes.
I saw his preseason games, and I mean, this guy, a lot of people think he's overrated. I don't think he's overrated. I think this is probably one of the better.
Yeah.
If you have him on your fantasy team, this is one of the better guys to get. He'll add definitely a lot of fantasy value with his legs this season, and he'll also add it with the passing too, because you saw in the preseason games he was throwing the ball deep in the preseason games. So I mean, we just gotta wait and see what's gonna happen during the season. But I honestly think this is a guy that you don't need to sleep on. You need to go ahead and get him if he's.
What's insane about him too is we did a Cronkite draft, a 12-man, and I think Caleb Williams went in the 13th or 14th round, and it's someone's backup quarterback.
Wow.
Yeah.
If he's your backup quarterback, I mean, even a starter, if he's your starting quarterback, it's insane. Just look at his receiving room. I mean, Keenan Allen, DJ Moore. DJ Moore was a demon last year. and Rome Odunze, the rookie from Washington, and DeAndre Swift out of the backfield, a great receiving back. So, I mean, I think Caleb Williams is an amazing pick. I think he's definitely the best rookie quarterback in this class, even though, Bo Nix is like my dad. But I think Caleb Williams is a great pick. I like that pick.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head right there. Yeah, talking about his if he was going into like a different situation, like similar to like Bryce Young last year with the Panthers, I think it would be like it wouldn't be as like as much of a sure thing for you to draft Caleb Williams this year. But you look at the guys that he has. You already said Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, and Rome Odunze, but you also got Cole Kmet, who was also decent last year as a tight end. He's got a lot of fantasy value, I'd say. And if I had to say, I'm not gonna lie, round 13 or 14 is crazy, especially in a 12-man. But I would say if you were in like somewhere in that range in a 10 to 15-man league, I would say probably take him around like round 7 if he's still floating around. Because I think he's a decent QB1. I think he's going to finish top 15 among QBs this year.
Yeah, 13th round, 133rd overall in our draft.
Yeah, that's going to be a steal later on the year.
Honestly, my third guy, this is going to be another rookie quarterback, Jaden Daniels from the Commanders. I think Jaden Daniels will have a good season this year, especially, last year put up great numbers for LSU with 40 passing touchdowns and only 4 interceptions. And, he can also carry the ball as well. So, I mean, who knows? Jaden Daniels this season, the Commanders do have some weapons out there with McLaurin. And, also in the backfield, you have Austin Eckler, who you could always dump it off to as a safety move there. But, Daniels, I honestly think could be a good guy to get. Maybe not like the top 5 rounds or the top 10 rounds, but possibly like, maybe 13th round, 14th round, something like that. Pick up a guy like Daniels.
I feel yeah. You got it.
Honestly, I think Daniels, we saw the preseason games. He played great his first preseason game, and he played only a little bit in his second game, but he still looked pretty good. And I honestly think this is a guy that could possibly give you maybe 16 to 17 fantasy points on certain days, and possibly, some days he'll get those 20 to 30 games if he needs to.
What's so weird about Jaden Daniels to me is, like, in our draft, Jaden Daniels went before Caleb Williams because everyone's like, oh, Jaden Daniels can run. He's going to get so many points. A lot of, like, fantasy times in fantasy, the receiver will get way more points than the quarterback but, like, with Jaden Daniels, I mean, he does have his legs, but that does worry me as well because in our episode that wasn't released, like our practice episode, I mean, Max said it completely. He said, we're going to see it like with Anthony Richardson last year. Jaden Daniels is a very injury-prone quarterback in the NFL with his legs.
Yeah, he runs with – absolutely. I mean, he runs with reckless abandon. But that would be the only thing
10 minutes
I'd be worried about with this pick. Because also, if you would have told me when we last recorded this episode on Wednesday, this pick, I would agree. I would say, I think Jaden Daniels, is coming in. Has a couple guys, Terry McLaurin, Luke McCaffrey, who's the draft pick that I'm seeing the Commanders are saying they'll start him, and they're very high on him. They picked him, I think, in the 5th round. He's a rookie. But what happened, I don't think, was it Friday or was it Saturday? I can't remember. But Jahan Dotson, which I actually did kind of want to, touch on this in weekend reactions. Jahan Dotson was traded from the Commanders to the Eagles. And the Commanders basically traded him for a bag of chips and a pedicure. That's basically what they traded.
Holy crap, the Commanders' receiving room sucks now.
Yeah, it's so bad. Yeah, if you're just now looking at this, Terry McLaurin is a decent wide receiver 1. Diami Brown, I don't even know who that is. I'm Diami Brown.
Bro, look at their wide receiver 2, Olamide Zaccheaus.
They changed it.
And okay, Luke McCaffrey is their wide receiver 3 now.
So I checked yesterday, and it said Diami Brown was their wide receiver 2. So they changed it to Olamide Zaccheaus. If y'all don't know who that is, I'm pretty sure he was wide receiver 5 for the Eagles last year. So it's like you're talking about a downgrade from
And one of the most washed tight ends too. Zach
Yeah,
Yeah, their
Ertz.
tight end's only projected 4 fantasy points, and he's a starting tight end.
Yeah, they got Zach Ertz, not prime Zach Ertz. They got retirement home Zach Ertz. And then they let go of Jahan Dotson, who is a former first-round pick, who I think has a lot of promise. They just let him go in a season. I'd understand if they had, if they were trading it, they were, completely rebuilding, which they kind of are. But at the same time, you're starting Jaden Daniels season 1. What do you want your rookie QB to have the most of? Weapons. In their first season, you want them to have weapons. The Bears have done exactly that. The Commanders are doing the exact opposite.
They're doing what the
They-
Panthers did to Bryce Young.
Exactly. They want Jaden Daniels to have the toughest time out there. They don't have a decent offensive line. I'm pretty sure they're starting not one but 2 rookies on the offensive line, if I'm not mistaken. And now they're also going to have a rookie receiver in Luke McCaffrey, who I am very high on. You know, if you have the last name McCaffrey and you're going to the NFL, I think you're going to do pretty good. But at the same time, you're letting go of a guy who's a deep threat in Jahan Dotson for nothing. So I think Jaden Daniels, he's injury prone, and at the end of the day, he doesn't have a lot of weapons. Honestly, Austin Eckler is probably their best receiver outside of Terry McLaurin at this point. So you look at a team, and here's also a big thing in fantasy. I like to draft guys who are on teams that are going to be good, because that means that they're going to actually get a lot of points. The Commanders are not going to be good this season. I hate to break it to any Commanders fans out there. They are not going to be a good team. It's going to take a little while for the Jaden Daniels experiment to work, and this year is not the year. So I'm going to have to disagree with you on this one, Reese, just simply because the Commanders front office does not like the state of Washington or the city of Washington. So
Yeah. Now, another guy I want to highlight here. This is my 4th guy. If you're looking for a tight end, you're going to have to go with Brock Bowers. I mean,
yes,
obvious choice
Yes,
here.
sir. He's on my Cronkite team, baby.
Brock Bowers
Even hard.
caught at least 56 passes in all 3 collegiate seasons at Georgia.
9th round. Let's go.
And he scored 26 TDs in 40 games and led this draft class in target share at 18%. And he got about 14.5 yards per game.
Yeah.
And I mean, honestly, Brock Bowers, if you have him on your fantasy team as your tight end, your fantasy team's going places. Like you might win the championship if you have a good enough team. Because Brock Bowers, I mean, this season, especially the Raiders, the only receiver they have is Devontae Adams, and Brock Bowers now is going to bring in some of that leverage off of Adams. You know, he's going to be able to score you some. I honestly think he'll average about 14 to 15 points a game. Because Marvin Harrison is projected week one against the Bills. He's projected 15.1, and Brock Bowers is projected about 10.
I honestly think with Brock Bowers, of course, in drafts it's going to be Kelsey as the first tight end, McBride, Laporta, people like that. But if you're taking, I don't agree with George Kittle over Brock Bowers. I'll tell you why, because the 49ers, they have McCaffrey, Ayuk, maybe. They might have Ayuk, I don't know.
Yeah.
Deebo Samuel. I mean, you just look at the weapons for the 49ers. And, of course, I mean, George Kittle's getting up there in age so far. I think that if you want a late-round tight end pick, if you're I'm going to stack up my running backs, I'm going to stack up my receivers, get a good flex, you can get, I got Brock Bowers in round 9.
Yeah.
Or him or Kyle Pitts. You can get in a late round, and it's a great pick, great quality pick, and you can have the rest of your team just be absolutely stacked.
So I didn't pick him up in the draft. I actually traded for him. But I think Brock Bowers is going to be really good this year. And here's why. Honestly, coming into this draft, he was probably, and there were a lot of media analysts that will say the same about this, because I saw them say it leading up to this NFL draft. Brock Bowers was hands down the most athletic player in this draft, 100%. And, the fact that he was drafted later is not because other teams don't believe that. It's just he's a tight end, and all those other teams that were drafting early weren't really looking
And
at
this
that.
draft
What did
class
they
was
need?
insanely stacked.
Exactly. So this is a guy that, I mean, I'm actually surprised he wasn't closer to getting Heisman in some of his seasons because he was that good at Georgia. He was the best player on Georgia. I know because I literally watched him beat.
Dude, I was at that game.
Beat Auburn. Yeah, I watched him single-handedly beat the Auburn Tigers. And so I think Brock Bowers is a great pick. If there's one person that I feel bad for in this situation, it's Michael Mayer, because I think that he was actually decent last year, and now the Raiders just said, sorry, bench, because we got Brock Bowers now. So I think, and considering, Devontae Adams, the one thing I'd be worried about is, Gardner Minshew is their quarterback, which, yes, Gardner Minshew, he's pass first, which I would like for this because he's tight end, But I also think, that being said, Gardner Minshew he's not really that great of a starting quarterback, among any NFL teams. So that being said, I think the Raiders are going to go for a more run-first approach with, Zamir White, who I think is going to be really good. Came in last year when Josh Jacobs got hurt. But I do think, that being said, I do think Brock Bowers will get enough production that he's a decent tight end. Honestly, I think he's going to be somewhere around 7 or 8 ranked among tight ends by the end of the year. So I think, like Taylor said, if he's sitting there around, round 8, 9, absolutely pick him up.
I will say the one thing about Gardner Minshew and Brock Bowers is Gardner Minshew's best tight end his entire career has been Tyler Eifert and James O'Shaughnessy. So I think with this new offense for Gardner Minshew, having that elite tight end, him and Michael Mayer both, I think that you'll see a lot more targets for Brock Bowers as well, with kind of like a safety valve with this Las Vegas Raiders team.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and Minshew's not a bad quarterback because we saw it last year. I think it was with the Colts, right? Yeah, he played good for a few weeks and then just like...
I'm not saying Minshew's bad. I'm just saying if he was on, say, a team I don't know, if he had a quarterback like, Joe Burrow or Josh Allen, I would like it more, but obviously that's not realistic because, he got picked early in the NFL, and if you get picked early in the NFL, you end up on a team that sucks. So, but I think Gardner Minshew, I would definitely not like this pick if he was on a team, say, the Commanders with a run-first quarterback in Jaden Daniels, but considering Gardner Minshew is specifically pocket passer, I do like this pick. This is probably my favorite pick from you so far, Reese, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys will agree with this last pick. This last one is a guy that got drafted by the New York Giants, Malik Neighbors from LSU. He's my favorite.
You had to do it.
Yeah, there's so many good players. I'm going to go through some honorable mentions that I probably was going to put on this list and probably should have put on this list. But Malik Neighbors, I mean, I guess you could say it's probably right to put him on there because he is projected about 13 to 14. But the only bad thing about this pick that I think I made a bad decision about was probably the fact that Daniel Jones, Danny Dimes does not come through some weeks, and you will see Malik Neighbors some weeks have 2 points.
Do we have a guy on our hall that's a Giants fan? I have to hide this podcast from him so he doesn't just storm into my room.
Yeah, no. If y'all are those listening, if some of y'all have not been watching preseason, Daniel Jones is terrible.
Yes.
I'll just go ahead and say it. Daniel Jones is horrible.
Here's one thing I will say, going back to Malik Neighbors, I think he's good. I do not think he should be drafted as high as he is. I'm seeing him going to round 3, round 2 sometimes, round 4. I think that he's a good wide receiver 2 or flex option. But if you have him as your wide receiver 1, you're gonna get last in the fantasy league. That's just the bottom line.
Yeah, I just, like I said, I mean, Daniel Jones, it's just some days he's decent and some days he just sucks. It's mainly he sucks, and that's the problem with Malik Neighbors, honestly, is in a few years he'll probably be on a different team because he wants to get traded because it'll be better value. But, I mean, some of the honorable mentions I had, though, on this list, I had Rome Odunze
Yeah,
as
let's say where's Rome at? So
Yeah, I had him on there. The only reason I didn't have him on like the actual list was due to the fact that I think he did get injured in camp, and I think he's like been out for a few weeks.
And he's wide receiver 3 in a stack.
yeah.
I honestly
Yeah.
think he'll be wide receiver 2 though, because I think Keenan Allen's gonna get hurt or run out of breath while he's playing. So
I
Yeah.
think one guy that where's Keon Coleman?
That's who I was gonna say next. Keon Coleman. For some reason, a lot of people don't really think like his stats from last year. They're saying if he was in fantasy last year, his stats would have been the third worst out of the class of 39 receivers.
Are they saying that while he was at Florida State?
Yeah, his stats were one of the worst.
You also got to remember, who did Florida State also have? They had Johnny Wilson. They had Ian Bell. They had Trey Benson, who is a running back that was, I think, the second or third running back selected on the board.
Yeah.
I mean, you know what I mean? Like, it's just, here's what I'll say about Keon Coleman. The only reason I'm high on him, and I don't even think he's going to be better than Neighbors, but I think he has better value because you can get him later on. You know, people aren't really thinking that highly of him. And look at the Bills wide receiver depth chart right now. I mean, they lost Stephon Diggs. Right now, their best wide receivers outside of Keon Coleman are Curtis Samuel and Khalil Shakur, who, I mean, like, I don't even think a lot of people know who that is. So, that being said, I think by the end of the year, I think Keon Coleman's going to be the leading wide receiver for the Bills this year. I'll go and say that. I think he's going to be the number one target, him and Dalton Kincaid.
I mean, if you look at it, though, he ran a 4.61 in his 40. And that, like, I mean, if you get a fast receiver like that, Josh Allen's going to have a field day with him, especially, you know, missing Stephon Diggs is big, but I think Keon Coleman could possibly fill in that role in year one. And that might be the reason that he could be one of the better wide receivers in fantasy this season if he, produces the way people think he might produce. And then one more honorable mention I want to highlight is Xavier Worthy. You know, fastest 40-yard dash in record. And, I mean, honestly, I think this for Mahomes is going to have fun with this guy because, I mean, honestly, he's not like Kadarius Toney where, can't catch the ball. But, Xavier Worthy, I honestly think he's projected like 11 fantasy points this season, I think, to start the year. And, I mean, they're high on him to start this season. And I honestly think Xavier Worthy is a sneaky guy. You either get him later in the draft or you pick him up during the season if he's in like the players ad list if you need him. And I think that's a guy right there that could potentially have a breakout season if Mahomes finds him open.
Can I add one before we end out real quick?
Yeah.
Ladd McConkey. I think Ladd McConkey is also a guy, just high value later on. Because you look at the Chargers, it's the same reason for Keon Coleman. Not to sound like, a broken record, but the Chargers, they lost Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. So you look at who they have now. They have Quentin, can't catch the ball, Johnson. And they have Joshua Palmer, the forever wide receiver, too. So I think Ladd McConkey will be the top target for Justin Herbert by the end of this year. And so, not saying that the Chargers are going to do anything good, but I think if you're sitting around, say, round 9 or 10 and you still haven't gotten, you need more depth for your wide receivers, and you focus more on tight end, a decent QB, you got running backs, got wide receivers, but you need a flex, I would go with Ladd McConkey or Keon Coleman simply because the wide receiver rooms around them are nothing. They got nothing around them. So, but that's all I want to say. Ladd McConkey, I think, will also be decent this year.
Yeah, but I mean, I think that was a good segment. Sure. First time introducing this fantasy breakdown segment. And next time on Fantasy Breakdown, we will talk about year 2 players to look out for in the fantasy leagues this season. We got some good year 2 players to look out for, especially some of the rookies from last year.
Before we end, I want to say This podcast, the way it's going to work, we record on Sundays and Wednesdays. We're going to be releasing on Monday and Thursday. Our Monday episode is going to be a reaction to what just happened that past weekend, the past week. And then our Thursday episode is going to be more predictions. We'll still review what went on in that like Tuesday, Wednesday range, but it's going to be mostly predicting the weekend and talking about what's going on that weekend in the world of sports. But that's the way it's going to work, and I'm excited for this podcast to get going.
100%. 100%. We, like I said, like I opened the show with, this is going to be a more uncensored podcast. We're going to speak our mind. And that's just going to be what it is. Like it or not like it, that's what it's going to be. We're going to speak our mind and let y'all know what we think. But we want y'all to let us know what y'all think. What other segments that you want us to add, because this is still a form of podcast. Like, this is the first episode. We're going to plan on doing many more episodes, 2 a week, like Taylor said. But we want to know what y'all think. What segments do you want us to add? What segments do you want us to bring back over from the Tigers Den? Which ones do you not want to see more of? And, yeah, just all of that. But that's going to do it for this first episode of Game Time with Taylor, Max, and Reese. We hope y'all have a blessed week. And we will see y'all on Thursday. Peace.
Thanks for listening to this week's edition of Game Time. Be sure to check out our episodes coming out every Monday and Thursday. We appreciate all the support. Also be sure to check out our Instagram at GameTimePod_official. See y'all next episode.